Hey everybody, thanks again for downloading our content. I am Jake Wiskerson, your host, and I'm going to take a sabbatical for a few weeks, so you're going to hear the same exact introduction over the next few podcasts, but I promise they're all good. They're actually a reboot of something that we did back in December of 2018 and January of 2019, where we did a 6-part series on emotional functioning. So I take the 10 core emotions as studied by Carol Izard. That's 2 R's and 2 L's in Carol, I-Z-A-R-D, Izard, if you want to look him up. And it's from the book that he wrote called The Psychology of Emotions. And I take these 10 emotions, 2 per episode, and try to compare and contrast them and go a little bit deeper into what their function is in our brain. So I hope you enjoy it. This is going to be a 5-part or 6-part series, I should say. But alongside this, I invite you to pay attention to the Zephyr Wellness accounts on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, because we're going to be posting videos about the individual emotions as they go through. And so you're going to get a video overview if you want, if you follow that. And they'll also be housed on YouTube, as well as this podcast. So feel free to share this stuff around. I think it's great. I think emotional functioning is something that should be taught in all schools. Personally, if I had my magic wand, I would wave it over all of kindergarten through 12th education and teach it throughout, but specifically in the freshman high school health curriculum that is universally required. We have to study lots of things about health in our 9th grade year. And emotional functioning, I think, should be one of them, and I think it should be this model. Personally, I study this stuff quite a bit, and I've yet to find such a comprehensive, overarching review of literature as what Izard did in the late 80s, early 90s. So this is why I present it. It makes a lot of sense. It's very straightforward. It's empirically based. It's well researched and studied. And if you want to check out his book, The Psychology of Emotions, it's quite expensive because it's out of print now, but it is very, very good. And if not, just listen to me, because I've done what I think is a decent enough job in distilling it down into some digestible pieces for you, and then you can go apply that in your own life. So enjoy the series, and if you hear my voice repeated over the next few episodes with some repeat content from about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, don't be surprised. I am just taking a break because I need one. In the meantime, if you need to check in on your emotional functioning, your mental health, go take a free and anonymous mental health exam, not an exam. What do we call these things? Survey, not a survey. Screening. That's the word I'm looking for there. Losing my mind these days, talking about mental health, and I lose my own mind. Take a free and anonymous mental health screening at WTTA.org/love. That's walkthetalkamerica.org. And you can click the thing all around the website. That organization is something I do in my free time. Really almost more of a full-time gig now, where we're trying to bring mental health treatment and care and personal well-being to the firearms community. And that would be people who use firearms in their daily lives for work, or hobbyists or collectors, whatnot, because historically firearms owners have been suspicious of getting their mental health tended to for a whole bunch of reasons, some of them legitimate, some of them perceived. And the flip side of that coin is to also make our mental health community of clinicians savvy and competent in understanding what firearms culture is like. So there's lots of resources on the site. We continue to build our organization, and I'm very proud of the work that we're doing. But one of the major things we do is offer these free and anonymous mental health screening tools that are hosted by Mental Health America. And you can check out mentalhealthamerica.net for more on them if you'd like. But in the meantime, get a screening. Get yourself taken care of. There are 2 in Spanish, the anxiety and the depression one, but I think there's 13 or 14 screenings overall. So check it out and share with a friend. Also, if you haven't, check out Audible. Audible kicks us a few bucks every time somebody signs up for a free 30-day trial at their website. And if you use audibletrial.com/noggin notes, that's how we get our little kickback, which is great because it helps to offset some of the costs. Turns out it's really expensive to host a podcast for 3.5 years. And now Noggin Notes has 3 podcasts under the same brand. So there's this Noggin Notes, and then there's Noggin Notes Africa and Noggin Notes Cambodia, all with exceptional content. I'm very, very proud to be affiliated with that too. Safiso, our founder, has done an amazing job hustling and working really hard to get great content creators, and the hosts have done a great job getting guests. So share this stuff around, and let's make the world a better place. I'll see you guys all in a few weeks. Hey, welcome back to the Noggin Notes podcast. I'm your host, Jake Wiskerson, and if you're new to the podcast, thank you for joining us, and we appreciate you tuning in. I hope that you find this valuable. We're trying to bring an awareness to people, bring some information. Noggin Notes' mission is to enrich and educate everyone's noggin on matters of mental wellness and psychology, spirituality, emotional functioning, social interaction, communication, and all sorts of stuff. So if you're into those kinds of things, and I assume that you are because most human beings are, and if you're listening to this and you're not a human being, I'd love to hear from you. info@nogginnotes.com and info@zephyrwellness.org is where you can reach me. Shoot over questions, inquiries, praises. If you have mean things to say, keep them to yourself, because I don't want to hear them. But seriously, thanks for listening. As always, the show is sponsored by Zephyr Wellness, which is a company I co-own in Reno, Nevada. We're a mental health outpatient agency. We're integrated with several other organizations in our Northern Nevada area. And we're doing what I think is pretty good stuff. Check out zephyrwellness.org and learn more. And if you have not yet downloaded the Noggin Notes app, because maybe you're just listening to this because it's a podcast, please check out the app. The app is for mobile devices, and what it allows you to do is track your emotional functioning and attach notes to that, hence the name, Noggin Notes. And it'll create a timeline for you. You can go back and review what you've written and why you've experienced what you've experienced, all in an effort to gain a better sense of self-awareness and thus, function forward instead of, maybe being stuck in certain cycles that you don't enjoy. This podcast episode is the second part in a 5-part series on emotional functioning, and I'm going to talk about interest, excitement, which is the same type of emotion, and then joy and enjoyment, which is a different type of emotion. We're going through all 10 fundamental or core or discrete emotions in this series, as studied by the late Carroll Izard. If you want to look up more about him, his name is spelled with 2 R's and 2 L's, Carroll, Izard, like a lizard, but without the L. He studied emotions for a really long time and contributed greatly to the field of the psychology of emotions. And like I've mentioned before, he quite literally wrote the book, The Psychology of Emotions. So check that out if you want to. It's a little hard to find. It was published some time ago, but very, very good reading. And it doesn't read like a textbook. It's actually quite interesting. So on that note, we will talk more about interest. I thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy this. In my experience, when I teach this stuff to people, I've discovered that by and large, people are very, I don't want to reuse the word I'm about to use, they're interested, but they are also very surprised, which is another emotion, to learn that excitement and interest are indeed a discrete emotion unto itself. And I say interest/excitement there. They're not two separate things, or they're one thing and they're on the same continuum. And as I go through these, you'll hear me say that emotions are on a continuum from very small to very large, and I may say that several times, because I want to keep reminding people that we don't experience the same amplitude of an emotion every time we experience something. So on this continuum, even though I list excitement as one of the 10 discrete or fundamental or core emotions that we have, you can pick your adjective to describe them, but the reason I list excitement and not interest is because excitement is a little bit easier to identify with people, I think, and this is just through anecdotal experience. I mean, feel free to disagree with me, but so I list them off, and I don't go from, I don't necessarily say the range of emotions in each one because it's too hard to memorize. But if you can memorize that excitement is one of your emotions, you'll know that down on the lower end of the continuum of what you feel, interest and curiosity also exist. And you can more or less use those two interchangeably, interest and curiosity. But in this particular podcast, I wanted to talk about what interest means, and I'm going to talk about joy a little bit later on. Happiness, all the way up to enjoyment, which would be synonymous almost with bliss, pure enjoyment of something. But we'll get to that in the second half. So in the first half, we're going to talk about interest and excitement in that continuum and why it's important. So I mentioned that people are surprised to find out that this emotion is unique unto itself, and I think most people have had an experience where they understand that they're excited, they understand they're curious, and I certainly hope that you're curious and interested to hear what I have to say about this. So if you know that and you can discern it, it's a pretty easy one to put your finger on. We can pretty easily put our finger on a lot of things like sadness and anger. Happiness, we certainly, most of us know, and interest certainly falls into that category. But of the emotions, it's possibly the most important one that we have because it serves so many functions. Now, in the previous week's podcast, I talked about how anger is used to motivate, and truly, at the end of the day, most emotions are useful to motivate some sort of behavior, but interest motivates a lot. Chiefly, it's the pursuit of discovery. And then that'll branch out into other categories too, and I'll list them as we go on. But if you're curious about something, you want to find out more about it. And learning to harness that is really important so that you don't go crazy, because some of our anxieties come from too much interest, too much excitement. Now, chiefly, I'll say that anxiety is rooted in fear, and that's a fear of the unknown. It's a fear of something that is uncertain. We like to have certainty. We like to know things. We like to be able to wrap our arms around stuff. And so we'll get our anxieties from fear largely if we don't know about something and we're not okay with it. And I'll get into fear in a different episode. But for today, I want to talk about interest and how interest can also breed anxiety too if it's not corralled appropriately. So oftentimes when we discuss the concept of being interested or being excited about something, we generally categorize it as a positive thing. It's something we want. We want to be interested and curious. I certainly want you to be interested and curious in what I have to say so that you continue listening and you continue to expand your horizons. Experience we ever have. So why do we stay in emotions longer than a few seconds? Well, it's because our frontal lobe is continuing to focus on the thing that has already triggered our emotions and then passed. As time passes, these things fade into the past. But we can certainly rechannel them just simply by focusing our attention back on them. So one thing that might be interesting is if you learn of something about someone else, but you don't have all the details. You might remark, wow, that's interesting. But usually it doesn't stop there because it's unsatisfying. We want to know more. And more, I put that in air quotes that you again can't see because this is radio, but you want to know more, and that more doesn't always have a terminus. It doesn't have an endpoint. So how much could we possibly know about something or someone or an event or an object that would satisfy us to the point that we stop asking questions? And the answer to that is probably not ever. There's probably not enough that we could ever ascertain to give us a full comprehensive picture about anything that's not us. And even we ourselves are so deep that we'll never know everything about us. So that's why I find the field of psychology so interesting, is because we can literally pursue knowledge of self forever until we die, and because we are limited. And if you believe in that we're all divine beings of some sort, then the divine being unlimited, we ourselves have all the capacity to achieve great things, and it goes on forever. So we should be perpetually curious about ourselves. And Carol Izard, from whose writing I draw this stuff, writes that there's nothing more interesting to people than other people. And there's certainly other interesting things like objects and concepts and philosophies and so forth, but we'll never really know everything there is to know about another human being. We'll never know everything there is to know about an object or a concept or a theory. And so as a result, what ends up happening is we can anxietize ourselves simply through not knowing how to set a limit on our own curiosities. There's that phrase that says curiosity killed the cat, and I'm not exactly sure where that comes from. I should probably Google that. But in my own mind, I'm drawing the conclusion that the cat doesn't know how to limit its own curiosity, and so it pursues things to the point that it either gets into trouble, falls off something, it meets its demise, or in the human world, we can kind of make ourselves just go a little bit berserk by not being okay with the limits that are placed upon us insofar as we'll never know everything that there is to know. So part of what I teach a lot is learning to be at peace, learning to embrace mystery. And that's not just the mystery of fear